Guys, I have stumbled upon something that is very, very, very interesting, very incredible. And it is because one of you guys, and I'm blanking on who it was, so please remind me if you watch this video. One of you guys, I believe in the live stream last week, said you got to check out Intuitive Underground and pointed me towards their YouTube channel. Now, the YouTube channel only has 22 subscribers and it's got one video that is 6 hours long, but holy smokes, when you dive into this one video, there is a lot. Now, I haven't gone through all of it yet, but I wanted to make this initial video right away because I'm just blown away by this team. And this is a team of remote viewers. Before I get into all the content, which I've tried to organize as best I could, because again, I've only gone through portions of the first 2 hours, but I'm sure there's a lot more to uncover and extract. So I'll be breaking this up into probably multiple videos. But what I've seen so far has been mind blowing, and it merges with a lot of Brett Stewart's remote viewing experiences that he described in when they remote viewed from the target Moksha. If you guys remember, I made a video about that, and that was wild. It talked a lot about the soul trap or soul trick theory, and also they had observations of grids and energy absorption, aka Loosh. Wild stuff. And these guys are saying the exact same thing from their remote viewing projects as wild. Now, actually, I believe I was told in the chat that these guys are connected or affiliated with Brett Stewart, but I'm not positive about that. I haven't seen anything on their website and their YouTube channel. They did to indicate as such, though they did mention the moksha word and that as a remote viewing target. So maybe this was the team that was with Brett Stewart that did that remote viewing. So wild, but they've got a lot to say in this video about all of that. And it's very, very interesting. So we're going to go through everything. Before we get into everything, and if you guys aren't interested in this next bit, I just wanted to showcase a bunch of things from their website, just so you get an idea of who these guys are. And again, I'm very early on in my research. I was pointed here. I watched the video. It sounded compelling. It sounded fascinating. I don't know these guys. I actually just messaged them. I want to interview them on the channel. I think it'd be amazing. But I am just presenting what I have found as food for thought. But I do think it's very, very interesting. So without further ado, the Intuitive Underground is a semi-formal organization comprised of individuals trained in the use of advanced intuition-based data acquisition and information analysis tools, primarily technical remote viewing. We've talked about remote viewing a lot on this channel. So just to give you a general summary, it's this idea, and I'm not the expert here, so don't get mad if I mess this up a little bit. But the main idea is, as opposed to astral projection, where you're projecting your consciousness outside of your body, it's like you're still, I believe, present within your body, but you're viewing things in potentially different timelines or different locations away from Earth or away from your location. And I believe it's been studied by the U.S. government and the U.S. military for spying purposes as well. But this is in a nutshell what remote viewing is. So it allows people to access information that they otherwise would be impossible for them to see or witness. So they said our goal in launching this web platform is to demonstrate the various applications of remote viewing and similar tools in uncovering difficult or impossible to obtain information regarding a variety of subject matters. Exactly what I was saying. We hope that you enjoy what we have to offer and encourage you to explore these areas further for yourself. If you wish to support our efforts, you can do so here. We would also love to hear feedback, etc. And why this type of information acquisition is so fascinating to me, even though I'm still learning about it and I have a long ways to go, but I think information is so strictly guarded and controlled and processed in terms of what we hear and learn about via conventional media sources. I mean, I don't have to tell you guys, I think everybody knows at this point. So it's very difficult to get to the bottom of what's really happening on this planet and in this reality. So these different avenues of accessing information are very interesting to me. It reminds me of the idea of gnosis, of direct knowledge, of direct information. And I believe these methodologies are the keys to accessing the correct real information, probably a combination of learning these techniques as well as having great discernment. And that is something that is discussed in this video as well. That's something that I've intuitively been thinking more and more about, the ability to discern truth from fiction. And how do you go about doing that? Maybe practicing, maybe also living an honest, authentic life. I just have a feeling that enables you to have better discernment, but these are just theories of mine, of course. Well, anyways, let's get into some of the people behind Intuitive Underground, just so you get a feel of the team. I just took excerpts of the first 4 people that were on the website. Again, this is just background information before we dive into the content, because you may not have heard of these guys. I don't think they have a super big presence online as of yet. Morgan Farrell. Morgan has been studying remote viewing since 2011 and 2012. He was personally vetted, assessed, and trained in technical remote viewing as a professional development student of Major Ed Dames, U.S. Army retired, earning an endorsement and joining Major Dames Matrix Intelligence Agents MIA team. I haven't even heard of this. This is wild. He has been operating professionally as an instructor and consultant since 2012, while continuing to study additional associated disciplines. In 2018, Morgan was pleased to release his first online training course, remoteviewingtraining.com. Daniel Mann began remote viewing in the summertime of 2012, building upon his growing experience in 2016. He was one of the last professional viewers to be personally trained by Major Ed Dames, U.S. Army retired, and additionally sought training with Major Paul Smith in 2025. With the information collected, this is wild that they're both with military personnel. And again, I haven't gone through and looked up these Army individuals who have retired, but if this is all indeed the case, it's wild. It's wild. Start training with Major Paul Smith. With the information collected over the course of his remote viewing experience, he believes that it imbues a sense of responsibility to disseminate to any and all who would seek it. Love that. Brian Lightfoot has been remote viewing since 2010 and is active in professional remote viewing community. He works as a remote viewing consultant and trainer through his company, Standard Remote Viewing. He has a bachelor's degree in psychology from McGill University. Because of his many years of work in personal empowerment industry, he has been exposed to a multitude of cutting-edge ideas and techniques. A vital few, such as remote viewing, exists where psychology ends and the physics of consciousness begins. Okay, last one, Jason Webb. In 2014, Jason began learning the basics of remote viewing from Major Ed Dames products and undertook professional TRV training from Morgan Farrell. Adding to his toolset in 2019, Jason took to leave the Hawaiian Remote Viewing Guild. Interesting. I haven't heard of them. I need to check them out too. Method with Deborah Duggan Takagi. Jason also implements a number of other cutting-edge tools such as extended remote viewing, ERV, and technical dowsing. Jason's prospective goals are to use remote viewing and other intuition-based tools to help resolve real-world problem sets for individuals, groups, commercials, well-beings, etc. Okay, so these are their backgrounds. Now, this is the point that you want to skip to in the video if you just want to jump right to the very, very wild and interesting stuff that these guys have to say, which again aligns with a lot of things that we've been hearing a lot lately on this channel, a la David Icke and Jason Giorgiani and others. So this is where they talk about the idea of the death process, which is normally a natural process. That process has been hijacked and has now been commandeered for the generation of this Loosh and this energy. And they actually talk about some ways in which the Loosh is being used specifically. And this is something that I've had questions about. I've gotten some answers, but they talk about this a lot in this video. So without further ado, we're going to hear these guys talking about how our death process and consciousness leaving this realm process has been utterly hijacked.
So this idea of the cycle at the point of death, where in which there is another hijacking of a natural process. Now we can't tell exactly if it is more of a simulation or if it is more or less a copying of a natural process where it's been subverted in some way, in some technological way, but where in which this idea is there's energy being harvested. It's spoke about in the Robert Monroe material. It's spoken about in the Raw material. It's spoken, or the Law of One material. I believe it's spoken about in the Urantia book as well to some degree, um, where in which this idea of what Robert Monroe would call loosh is being generated by these highly agitated and emotional human beings. Um, this also happens during lifetime. I've had it happen to me once. I believe that's what it was. I haven't looked at it with remote viewing to really verify this. But this idea of a human being in a very desperate, emotionally overcharged sort of way, the human generates this type of energy. And this energy is being harvested to not only run the simulation that we're all living in, but also it's being used off outside of the simulation. Now, whether that's just our planet or if it's the entire universe, I'm still undecided, given on the data. Um, and also at death, there's also something going on in this hijack process where other things are being, I would say, removed from the cycle. Um, Now, this is might be one of those spots where the more positive spiritual things might come in, where this idea of graduating the school of earth might come into play. It's not in the data, but I suspect that this is might be where this might fit into our mosaic of remote viewing data.
That's pretty wild. And I actually have heard this before, but if you think about it, that's so wild that he's saying the loosh is being used to basically power the system. So it's as if the containment unit that is containing us is being powered by us. It's crazy. It's kind of like the Matrix, the movie The Matrix, where that whole Matrix system was being powered by the people that were entrapped within it. It's wild. Talked about the Matrix, I feel like multiple times now on this channel. Now there's another way that or use for loosh and this fuel as well that's talked about in a later account. But okay, now we're going to transition into a topic that I just talked about in the Tibetan Book of the Dead video that I made about this idea of evading this bright, comforting light and trying to go to the dull light. That's what they say in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Like there's multiple lights. You want to go to the dull light, not this bright, flashy light that is kind of comforting and lulls you into a false sense of security and then brings you back into reincarnation. And these guys say that they saw the same thing. They saw got the same type of information from their data. And by the way, just to let you know, when these gentlemen are remote viewing, the idea to maximize for accuracy and to minimize mistakes or maybe letting individual biases creep into the data is these guys all focus on the same target separately. The way remote viewing works, as far as I understand, is they're given a target, they're given a word, but the word has no connection to the actual target. It's like psychically connected. So a person who has the actual target in mind thinks that target, but then writes this word on a piece of paper. Then he gives it to the individuals, and they just open up an envelope and they see this word. So this word has no actual connection to the actual target. So it's not meant to, they don't want to bias the remote viewers. But that through that psychic energy, is my understanding, they can pick up on the wavelength of the target, and then they all like go to this target. And then they know that they're all seeing the same thing for the most part after their experiences, because they'll come back and they'll talk about what they witnessed. And then if they have a lot of overlapping hits, then they know, okay, this is a highly effective reading. Okay, anyways, that's how it works. This is what they came back and talked about when they talked about the same idea. The white light portals that Elizabeth April talks about opening up, right? These white light portals that are sucking people in, these are false lights. And these are used to lull us into a sense of comfort and bring us into that like weird astral plane.
So the stuff that Dan's just starting to touch on here, this was probably what I would consider our first huge breakthrough in understanding these processes. This happened in 2015, and it came about as the result actually of an experimental remote viewing target that one of our guys tasked us against. The target that he came up with was, quote, the most significant remote viewing target, unquote. The idea behind that was to, in a kind of a roundabout way, ask a question. Well, to ask a question that we didn't know what the question was. So effectively, what we're asking here is, through remote viewing, what is the most significant thing that we could use remote viewing to look at? And the results of that project, this is when we first started to come across the idea of the soul trap, forced reincarnation. So what that data basically showed us was somewhat of a storyboard wherein we see planetary catastrophe, Earth changes, resulting in a mass death event. The mass death event being likened to a harvest or a recharging of a battery. And this is where we started to get all these ideas about, you guys may or may not have come across this idea of the light at the end of the tunnel during the death process. So what our data showed us was that light is in fact a false comforting light. It is effectively a lure designed to trick you into going towards it, um, effectively as a means of comfort in what you could imagine would be a rather traumatic experience, finding yourself suddenly outside of your body, nothing but pure consciousness. It's a state that surely we've all been in before and will be in again, but we don't consciously remember it while we're here. And I would posit that you don't necessarily remember being in that state immediately upon your next iteration of death. So what the data is telling us is that whoever these archons or whatever you'd like to call them, I just think of them in terms of they're our oppressors, they're our opposition, our adversaries. And what they've done, again, is they have effectively mimicked the entire natural creation process artificially, technologically, and hence the concept of simulation. So apparently what happens upon death is you are presented with probably a number of options. However, I would suggest that probably due to a lack of preparedness during one's lifetime, one's natural reaction, almost certainly and very much understandably, is going to be to scramble towards the appearance of comfort in the form of that white.
Of that white light. That's so wild. I mean, he said a lot. He talked about, I think, the number of catastrophes and those catastrophes coinciding with the recharging of batteries, which kind of makes sense if I remember hearing that correctly. So you probably have mass chaos at those moments and a massive outpouring of loosh, so to recharge the system in some substantial way. But that part is really interesting. That part resonated with me a lot about the false light because, like I said, I just finished reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and there's a lot of discussion in that book in the intermediate state or the Bardo state about these false lights and avoiding these false lights. So they're kind of echoing those same sentiments. It just, again, brings back to mind when Elizabeth April is talking about the light portals and helping guiding people towards the white light when they're confused or lost. And I have to believe it's all one and the same when they talk about this white light, although it could be different. I don't know for a fact if that's the case, but man, that's very wild that it is sort of a lure and it's some sort of hijacking of this natural system. So there, maybe we're normally meant to see like this dull light that is discussed in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but now they've sort of commandeered it and said, well, we're going to put a brighter one and get you guys to come our way instead of the natural progression of the journey that the soul would normally go on. All right, now here, another quick summary. They say very, very directly, the main point, quite simply, don't go into the light.
Remember it. At this point is really the main point of why we're kind of out talking about this. Obviously, we can sit here for hours upon hours and flesh around the ideas of what the data says and what we've come across, but ultimately, just listening for the last hour and a half, it's all been leading up, and probably for the next 2 or 3 or 4 hours, is ultimately the best thing that we can come from that has come from this data is don't go in the light. The light is a particular trap, where in which I don't want to attack this. So this idea of getting closer and closer, being pulled into this warm, welcoming, very happy, loving light. At the point where you get too close or you get to the vent horizon of this light, it's like you don't have a choice anymore. It's automatic processing time, where in which the soul complex, I would probably say, the witness versus conscious memories of the current life that you've just finished, where things start getting separated.
Wild. Now we're going to go into another section. So it sounds simple enough when you say, okay, look, you're going to see this light, don't go into it. But it's more complicated than that. Now somebody else chimes in, and I believe her name is Fringe. And And by the way, the background that they have, I'm not exactly sure what that is or why they didn't put themselves on camera. But again, it's their one video, so maybe they're still not totally comfortable with being on camera or being on YouTube. But I think I saw the name of this person that's about to talk now, and I believe her name is Fringe. Yeah, you can see it there in the title too. So, anyways, she's going to chime in and say, "Well, it's not as simple as we may think. It might not just be okay. I see the light and I avoid it, easy peasy. No, it's a little bit more complicated."
Us to go. And I just wanted to point out that, some people are sucked into this light. They don't have a choice. So the idea that we might be able to turn away from the light or have a choice isn't necessarily what happens to everyone. I just want to point out some people get sucked right into it.
That's crazy. Now, is there something, is it we're getting sucked into it once we give it a certain amount of attention? Is there some sort of implicit consent being given by saying, okay, I'm going to go away. It's kind of curious. I'm going to go toward it to a certain extent. And then you hit the point of no return, the event horizon, as they mentioned, and then you get sucked in, or is there literally, you're going in the opposite direction and it sucks you up like a vacuum? I don't know. I want to interview these guys so badly. It'd be incredible to get some of these finer points and ask these more detailed questions. But as of now, I don't know. And why do we get sucked into the light? I think this is Fringe continuing. Why? What happens to us? Why are certain people more vulnerable than others?
Exactly right. And I think the reason that people find themselves sucked into this soul trap, this recycling system, this forced reincarnation, is simply because I would suggest the vast majority of people have never, and sadly maybe will never, do a single thing in this lifetime towards developing their innate psychic or conscious capabilities. So you could imagine that you suddenly find yourself in this permanent or seemingly permanent out of body state. You're dead. Your body is no longer viable for you to inhabit. Oh boy, so you find yourself in this in between, or this nexus state. It's very easy to imagine that experience would be rather uncomfortable, if not outright traumatic. So you can imagine it'd be very, very easy, and almost a natural reaction to scramble with all you can muster towards any signs of comfort or stability. In this case, the light.
And this is stated time and again in different ways and different terms, but David Icke talks about the importance of having good awareness and that being the toolkit by which to avoid these traps and tricks. Jason Georgiani gives an entire 5-step protocol in Thenosis about how to become mentally stronger and consciously stronger so you can avoid these things. I mean, so they're kind of all saying the same kind of thing. And I think this is why it's important that we do research these topics like remote viewing, out-of-body experiences, astral projection, for these exact reasons, to give us our best shot here when we do go up against whatever these forces may be. Now, this is really cool. Okay, I said that the last one was Fringe. It was another gentleman, but I think this is Fringe coming back. Now, she said, even if we don't master OBEs, master astral projection, maybe these are tasks that are too tall for many of us. But she says the one thing that is very important that we can all work on right here while we're on this planet is the skill of discernment.
And so discernment in this life, even if we're not able to develop our psychic potential, we're not out of body every night and roaming around and encountering these entities in the astral or whatever this realm is that they control. Just practicing discernment in our physical bodies, in our physical life, and in our minds is so essential. I just can't stress it enough. These things are tricksters. They have appeared to me as my dead grandmother. They have appeared to me as other various relatives, bosses, anything you can possibly think of. I've watched them change in front of my eyes. They will try one energy signature and one visual, and if that doesn't work, they'll change into something else. And it's basically anything they can do to get you into their system.
I think that if you're probably watching this video and you're into this type of material already, I don't know what level of discernment we need to have in order to be adept enough to make these decisions properly at that time, but I imagine you're probably already pretty aware of and questioning a lot of what's happening on this planet, and not just going with the flow of the natural narrative that just seems to be falling apart every second more and more so. So I imagine you're already on the stronger side of discernment than most, I guess. But then what would it be other ways to strengthen this ability? I'm really curious to know. My guess, I do think there's something to this idea. I really do believe there's something to this idea of we ourselves living as truthfully and openly and honestly as possible. And that will also embolden our abilities to, or enhance our abilities to have greater discernment. But that's just more of a theory. I'd love to hear that backed up. That's just like an intuitive feeling that I have. But in whatever it may be, I think just this idea of really thinking critically about people, about narratives, I think all of these things would help us build this skill of discernment. Okay, this is wild. So this is a big question that I have. What's the point? What's the point of imprisoning all of us if this is indeed a loosh farm? What's the point of harvesting this loosh? What are they trying to accomplish? Is it something really important, or is it just trying to keep expanding fruitlessly, endlessly for what? And then eventually it's just going to collapse anyways. Is it sort of just, hey, we just want to keep the wheels turning, or is there some larger purpose? Now that question doesn't exactly get answered here, but at least some more of the specifics of what Loosh could be used for is answered here. So again, one is to basically power the simulation. So that's the ironic bit. We're powering the simulation that's keeping us entrapped in the simulation. But then this is another usage, I guess, apparently of Loosh.
And I think we also have to entertain the possibility they're using this fuel. They're fueling their ships with this Loosh. I mean, it goes beyond. Yeah.
Yeah, that's in the data.
If you can remember to dive into that, the idea.
Just understand, I don't know what your data is. I'm just speaking from my own experiences.
Right.
So it's fascinating that it's in the data.
Crazy. Okay, now here is a beautiful way to end this video. But I think a lot of us know this already. This is not, and this is why Tony Sayers doesn't call it a trap. He calls it a trick. This is not us being just stuck and with no way to get out. Because the thing that they end on, and this goes back to the law of free will, which I want to get like a free will expert on here, something just to talk about this more and understand a little bit more about why this law is echoed so many times and people just swear by that this is foundational. But this goes back to this idea that ultimately, and this is why so much effort is being put forth to trick us, to confuse us, to keep us in this fog and haze of deception and confusion, is because ultimately, whether it's gotten truthfully or dishonestly, our consent is needed for this system to keep running. We need to actively participate. They need us to sign on the dotted line. And that means that ultimately we do have sovereignty. We do have control. That's a beautiful way to end, but I'm going to let them take it away and explain exactly what they mean.
For the people who don't just get sucked up right away, which is a whole other topic, there's some type of consent that is needed here. They need us to, and they don't care if it's by a trick, but there's something there where they need us to do this ourselves. They need us to follow the relatives, to get tricked. They need us to follow the fake, religious figure, whatever they come up with. It's like they need our consent for this. And they don't care if we're just naive or if they lie or if they trick us, but it's almost like we have to enter on our own. I don't know if you guys are seeing that or not.
Yeah,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's actually a significant amount of data that we've cross-referenced and cross-verified. Again, different viewers at different times, running different sessions have they've all come up with. I think the easiest way, again, using word labels that make sense in our experiential context, we have referred to it as a corrupted legal process, corrupted legalities, corrupted contractual obligations. So, that pretty much directly invokes, the concept of soul contracts that are rather prevalent in maybe this end of things. It's often discussed, in more new agey circles, and that's, again, it harkens back to the concept that we keep talking about, where what they have done is they have hijacked. This language has been used in the sessions. This is directly from the data, that they have hijacked, sabotaged, or corrupted a natural process. And you're exactly right. Yeah, we've been tricked into this in the first place. We're tricked into maintaining this process, into staying apart.
There it is. So I thought that was a cool way to end the video because that's an uplifting message. And it's a message that resonates with me. I do actually think there's merit to it just from a pure intuitive, just from my pure intuition, but more digging needs to be done. Wow. Like that blew me away. Thank you, whoever that was that pointed out this video in the comments. There's a lot of good stuff in here. And I have reached out to this team. Like I said, I would love to interview them and get them on here so we could talk in more detail about just their methodologies, the data that they're talking about, some of the things that they've witnessed, and just get more into the nitty gritty of how they think all of this stuff fits together in the grand scheme of things. And also, ultimately, if we do evade the light, where are we meant to go? Or is it just out of the trap and then we can do anything that we want? Or is there a specific place, a pleroma, if you will, that we're aiming to get back to? I don't know, but I'm so curious. The journey continues, ladies and gentlemen. That's all I got for you guys today in this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you guys for all the support. This has been incredible to learn all this information, to share with all of you guys. And by the way, it's just a wheel. We have our own cyclic existence here, but a good one, where I put out information, then people get in the comments or in the live chat, and then they put information back into me, and I research it, and then I dive deeper, and then I share it with you guys. It's just, I think we're an entire sort of group think here that is just, I don't know, it's incredible and it's empowering, and it's just helping me so much. So I hope it's helping you guys as much as it's helping me. Thank you again for joining, and we'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.